Okay, it's 9:30, past half a minute. I guess I ran everyone off. I guess I'll go to the last page. It's kind of like, I don't know if I can tell this joke correctly, but there's a snowstorm and it's Sunday morning and the preacher is waiting the congregation and only one person comes in. And the preacher said, what should we do? He said, well, if I'm out feeding my cows, if one cow comes up, I'm going to feed it. So, okay, the preacher gets up there and just really gives a sermon. And when it was over, he asked the person, well, how was it? He said, well, when if one cow comes up, I'm not going to feed him the whole bale of hay. I might have missed something in there, but anyway, I can always remember that. See, this week we have a few birthdays, don't we, Darlene?
Yes, sir.
Well, happy birthday. And Maxine Johnson and Janie Hill, Danny Wampler, Ava Mae Hunt, Brad Johansson. That's our older crowd. Oh, excuse me, Darlene, you're not in the older crowd. It wasn't listed. I wonder who, let's see. What was that guy's name? That good-looking guy with a slick mustache? Well, happy birthday. Well, what's going good? What has happened good this week? Anybody, anyone, anything want to praise the Lord? Or? Yes, sir?
Hope's nephew repaired all of our stained glass and all passed away this week, so
Okay. Okay.
not totally unexpected.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
We've been praying for him for a while.
For sure. For sure. Okay.
Oh, Glenn Thompson, Hope's nephew, that hit business with his son that we've been praying, done repair on his stained glass, he passed away.
Repair. He didn't do glass, but he repaired.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Abby finally got in to see a neurologist. And so, they have some answers and they know how to move forward and things are looking better.
Well, excellent. Excellent. We'll talk about our daughter-in-law, Abby. Going to have an appointment with a neurologist. Okay. I don't know if I can juggle this. I put my notes on a different paper so I can carry them with me a little bit easier. And I've got my book, my Bible. I don't know if I can juggle this. But anyway, I wanted to share. I didn't mention this last time. I'm reading out of the New International Version in chronological order. So, if you haven't seen one, they put the verses together. They say 15 through 28, but when I'm reading out the passage, I don't know what verse I'm on because it doesn't show it over here. But when I was looking at this for chapter 4 today, and we're going to cover chapters 3 and 4. When I was reviewing chapter 4, the first verse is over here on this page, and the next couple of verses are over here. Then it jumps back up here on the top of this page. So I put arrows in my Bible. Okay. Okay. Last week, our 12-5 Cowboys bit the dust.
Just like Green Bay last week.
I took my plastic Lombardi trophy down, scratched out 22, and I wrote in 23. Maybe next year. But you know, there was that one time where the Cowboys in the 70s were in the Super Bowl 5 times in that decade. And then they jumped to the 90s, and we really thought we were going to have a dynasty going. 3 Super Bowls. But the Packers won, the Broncos won the next year, and the St. Louis won the next year. So it kind of fizzled out. So that dynasty didn't sustain itself. Even in the political field, back in the 20th century, we heard names of the Roosevelts, the Kennedys. Later, we hear the word talking about the Bushes, the Clintons. But they don't sustain. They don't last forever. But David went 4 decades, 40 years. He created, and you can say that was a dynasty. So it is passed on to Solomon for the next 40 years. So that dynasty continues. So in chapter 3, it begins verse 1. See what I'm telling you? I'm looking here, it says 2. I got to jump up here to 1. It starts with a royal marriage, but we're going to circle back to that later. I'm going to jump down here to verse 2. The people, however, were still sacrificing at high places because the temple had not been built for the name of the Lord. Because it wasn't going to be built during the time of David. We know that. But still, we see in the next few verses that they are still going to the hill, high place, and offering sacrifices and burning incense. While Solomon was up there, he had a dream. If God came to you and promised you anything you wanted, what would you request? Would you request all the money in the world? Power? You ask for health for your family, your spouse, a new job, on and on. Because we can go back and think about in our times. I know when I was a kid, slept on the top bunk, and I always wished when I got up there would be a pair of boots. I don't know, just a pair of boots. I got older and wanted that new car. In high school, she sure is. I wish I could get up enough nerve. I wish I could get up enough nerve to ask her out. But you know, wishes kind of determine where we are in our lifetime. And where was Solomon? He's been appointed king. So let's look. It says, verse 5, Solomon, it's titled Solomon Asks for Wisdom. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. Solomon answered, you have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you, and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued his great kindness to him, and have given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. What do we see in that? You can go ahead and throw in your thoughts. What did you see in that? He asked him a question, what do you want? He doesn't answer him. What's Solomon doing? Thanking God. Being humble. Exactly. He's praising God. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in the place of my father David. But I am only a little child. When we go into the next step of our lives, I am a little child. What's he saying? Where's those right hands? Go ahead and just contribute here.
He's saying that he doesn't have the experience.
No experience. Didn't know everything. When we turn a teenager, don't they know everything? And the parents' intelligence goes down and the child's goes up. But he's humble. He says, I am a little child. I don't know everything. I need some help. They do. He should, yes.
David, kind of the same way when he said, I can't fit this armor. Remember?
Oh, yes, exactly. Very good. Very good. Nice breeze in here. But I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. Because when you become in charge, you have the responsibility increases tenfold, 1,000-fold. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. I don't remember seeing what the number is, but in chapter 4, we kind of have maybe an idea. So you give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, since you have asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies. Sometimes leaders, when they get in a position, say, I'm going to retaliate somebody down the line. But for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you have asked. I will give you God is saying, I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never be anyone like you, nor will there ever be. So true. the wisest man on earth forever, except Jesus. Very good. Except for Jesus. And if you walk in my ways and obey my statutes and commands, as David your father did, I will give you a long life. I will give you a long life.
You know, John, that goes back to that scripture in Ephesians 3 where it talks about that God gave you more than you can even begin to ask for. He asked for wisdom, but instead of that, he gave him wisdom, but he added to it.
And where did it start? Even though he's in a dream, we start by prayer. We sit in prayer. Give all glory to Yahweh.
And also God said, if he put the stipulation in there, you'll have wisdom if you do all of this. You have to do nothing. It's the same thing when you become a Christian, people think you're baptized and you're good to go. But you're not. There's if there.
So true. Okay, we'll come back to this wisdom, or circle back. Where did I get that? Who circles back? No, I'm not going to get into that. But here comes a story that we all know that's very famous. And I'm not going to go into the details about the two prostitutes, but we know that story. But look at near the last verse, it's 28. When all Israel heard the verdict that the king had given, they held the king in awe, because they saw that he had wisdom from God to administer justice. I go from here to there to here. Give me a second, please. Okay. Wisdom. How do we perceive wisdom? How do we get wisdom?
Probably experience.
Experience. I figured you would say experience. I was going to bring a little brochure. And it said 10 ways to gain wisdom. And each one, it said experience. Number 2, experience. Number 3, experience this. And 4. And it just related to the situations that we face in life. But how do we get biblical wisdom? By studying. What happens in studying? Knowledge. Draw closer to God. Both of them. I mean, what you're saying is correct. We draw closer to God. And that relationship becomes so strong. And everything throughout the Bible, I'm seeing love throughout. I see relationship throughout. Relationship with Him and relationship with each other. Because we not only love Him, but we love our brother and sister in Christ. And it carries on that we step out those doors and the secular world sees love in us. And maybe when they're ready, we can tell them about Jesus. To be wise is to understand what God wills, and we practice it. Not primarily from the head, it's a matter of the heart. Wisdom has to do with one's orientation to God. Solomon claims in Proverbs 9:10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. This wisdom is a product of God's divine presence in Solomon's heart, as long as the king sought the Lord through his word.
Thinking about your mind. If it's your mind, then this, what was, but it had reason and all these kind of things. But without a heart, it's your mind.
Sure, sure. Um, 10 minutes till 10. I'm down to my last 2 pages. Where are we going to go from here? No, there's a lot. Okay. So any other thoughts about chapter 3? Yes, sir.
I think it's really interesting that chapter 3 starts off with his arranged marriage to the daughter of Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's after that he asks for wisdom. And it's really, it's not just funny as it sounds, but it's after that that he asks for wisdom. But then you see in the long run, what really brings Solomon away from God is his 1,000 women that he has. And I think to me it's just interesting that this chapter starts off with that one of those arranged marriages.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way Solomon evidently got all of his wives. It was arrangements for, and that's the way his empire grew, is he had all these arranged marriages. And he wasn't a man of war because he didn't have to, because he conquered people by marrying their relatives. And but that's what brought him away from God eventually, along several chapters away from this. But maybe when he took Pharaoh's daughter, he realized that wasn't wise. And then he asked for wisdom, and he uses it for a long time, but then his human nature gets the better part of him.
That's true.
I don't know.
That's true. It is. He had the arranged marriage out from the family. He might have thought, well, this is a political move that I can get support if needed. But I think it really talks about his why, this marriage, later in the book of Kings. But it's very true, what you were saying. Any other thoughts about chapter 3? Chapter 4 begins over here on page 609. Oh, excuse me, 610. Kind of retreating back to chapter 3. Can't tell you exact verse, but it's after next after he said, I am only a little child. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count. So he has a kingdom. I don't have a graph, a picture, an overhead, but you look at the country he has, and there's, am I safe to say millions of people? How's he going to rule this kingdom? How's he going to rule this kingdom? That's where we are, exactly, Mike. That's chapter 4. So King Solomon ruled over all Israel, and this is his chief officials. And he lists them. And then he goes down to verse 7. Solomon also had 12 district governors all over Israel. He cannot do it by himself. He has to have people under him to cover these areas. These 12 districts supplied provisions for the king in the royal household. Now, each district provided supplies for the king and his court for 1 month in a year. And there it lists all the names. Today, my task is not to go over every aspect of this area. And Solomon ruled over all. I'm at verse 21. This reads, not to confuse it, this reads verses 21 through 21 and 24. And I jump over here to this page, and it says 22, 23, 27, and 28. Oh, excuse me, and jumps down to 20 and 25, and it jumps over here. So try to follow along while I skip around here. That was finished 19. Verse 20. The people of Judah and Israel was as numerous as the sand on the seashore. They ate, they drank, they were happy. In the time of David, it was war. He was a warrior. Everything was set. It transferred over to Solomon. A peaceful time. His wisdom, he is overlooking his kingdom. Like I said, there was as numerous as the sand on the seashore. But they ate, they drank, and they were happy. I hope they're not becoming oversatisfied. During Solomon's lifetime, Judah and Israel from Dan to Beersheba lived in safety, each man under his own vine and fig tree. Seems like every time you read a verse, you could preach the word on everything. But my objective is to kind of take us through Kings. And y'all can share anything at any time. And Solomon ruled over all the kingdom from the river to the land of the Philistines as far as the border of Egypt. These countries brought tribute and were Solomon's subjects all of his life. For he ruled over the kingdoms west of the river from Tibshah to Gaza and had peace on all sides. Ooh. Does any of this ring a bell? Any thoughts? Anything to share? Charlie, I know you got a thought. Maybe in the last time, right? Maybe in the last time. I'm reading verses 22, 23, 27, and 28 in this section. Solomon's daily provisions were 30 flowers, 30 cores of fine flour, and 60 cores of meal, 10 head of stall-fed cattle, 20 of pasture-fed cattle, and 100 sheep of goats, hundreds of sheep and goats, as well as deer, gazelles, roebucks, and choice fowl. For the district officers, each in his month supplied provisions for the king Solomon, all who came to the king's table. They saw to it that nothing was lacking. They also brought to the proper place their quotas of barley and straw for the chariot horses and other horses. Why am I reading all this? Why is this all in here?
Number one, to show how organized he was.
Organization. I didn't even put that down. Organization. Why else are we reading all this? Your turn.
I didn't hear you. Well, I'm hearing aids and I'm not listening.
I'm reading all this. I'm saying, why am I reading all this about what the provisions for Solomon and all to his table?
That was your early day first soup kitchen, if you really want to know the truth.
Okay, all right. Each district supplied him each month. They had a responsibility. It's showing his wealth. Hope. Your lips are moving. I don't hear you.
Well, not only did they provide food for him and his entourage, he provided protection for them.
True. We saw that. We saw that word back in there, safety. Everything was peaceful.
Well, it was peaceful because he had all the armor.
And that was coming out of my mouth. And you beat me to it. That is great. Wisdom. Pardon?
Because people saw that.
Yes, yes. Okay.
One of the sad things about it, when the start of chapter 3 there, it said he made a alliance with the Egyptian Pharaoh, and then he married that first wife. Is the start of where we're going to continue the downward plummet of the wisest man that ever walked.
It kind of goes that way, doesn't it? Verse 29 through 34. God gave Solomon wisdom and very great insight, in the breadth of understanding, and is measureless as the sand on the seashore. Solomon's wisdom was greater than the wisdom of all men of the east, and greater than all wisdom of Egypt. He was wiser than any other man, including Ethan, wiser than Heman, Calcol, and Dorda, and his fame spread to all the surrounding nations. He spoke 3,000 proverbs, and his songs numbered 1,005. He described plant life from the cedar of Lebanon to the hyssop that grows out of the walls. He also taught about animals and birds and reptiles and fish. Men of all nations came to listen to Solomon's wisdom, sent by all the kings of the world who heard of his wisdom. Quite a guy. And we saw what was happening in the kingdom in the previous verses. They all come to listen to him. we ever attain this level of wisdom? Simple. As simple people like myself, others, will we ever attain this wisdom?
I personally don't think we will. Back in chapter 3, God said that nobody else will ever. There'll never be a person.
Never.
This was kind of a one-shot, a one-time deal.
What is he telling us? Pardon?
Solomon's wisdom came directly from God, but we have the Word now, and the wisdom that we have is going to come from the Bible and nowhere else.
Oh, I didn't. That just. Okay, where was it? So maybe I can find it back over in chapter 3. And if you walk in my ways. Okay? We're going to attain it. Not to that level. But if we walk in His ways. I think it was last week as I was walking out. I just went blank. John Taylor's wife. Huh?
Lorraine, oh, no, Bobby Joe?
Bobby Joe. She said, it's all about obedience. That's a key word. But it's obedience, walking His ways, to follow His will, and like Nike says, do it.
God he asked God for wisdom instead of all of these other great wealths and stuff like that. So God granted him the wisdom, and that brought the wealth because of his wisdom.
True. It all works together. David. As a man lacks wisdom. Okay. Okay. Exactly.
And John, maybe we're not gifted with such a gift of wisdom like Solomon, but we know some people in our lives that are wise and do make good decisions. And these people, they sought him out, and all people from all the nations came to learn at the feet of Solomon. We can still search those wise people out.
Exactly.
And learn from them.
We do. When I was in my younger days, doing a lot of thump, I went to Dean Smith, John Wooden, to seek out the more knowledge about basketball. But we do that in everyday life. We seek out that knowledge. And our knowledge now that we're seeking out is here. Like I said, we could take and stop and, well, that's what I want you to be doing. Taking it in. We're reading the Word. I hope you don't mind me reading it. It sounds good to hear my voice over the speaker. But when you hear it out loud, we sit at home and just kind of read it. But when we hear it out loud, doesn't it have a different emphasis on us? Before I read my last sentence, any final thoughts? What's your final thought, Joel?
I think if we really get in the book search, that we will get wisdom from God, and it will make our life so much easier.
True. So true.
John, Hope and I used to go to a lot of positive mental attitude seminars.
Okay.
As long as they can keep you on that high, you can do things. But when we let the world come back in and start pulling us down, we forget the joys we were having when we on this high. And I'm not talking about a dope high. I'm talking about
Right.
a mind high. And that's what we have. This man was wise in all things. And we can't understand how one man can be that wise when we forget where it comes from.
Right along with you. Did the same thing. But you know what? We have Psalms and Proverbs to get us back on the high. We have each other. Very good. Any other thoughts?
What I saw out of this, they listed a lot of men's names in the world during that time.
Mm-hmm.
We don't even know anything about any of them, but evidently they were pretty wise in other areas of the world. But yet Solomon was wise.
Right.
They came to him for advice.
If I had an organization that needed financial help, I'd go over here to Scott. Help me, Scott, with my finances here, for my company. Exactly.
It goes further to prove that the Bible is true.
Uh,
Brought in other people from other parts of the world.
if you don't believe, what's our main thing? Not our main thing. We have a lot of main things. Is the word true? Julie, is the word true? It's true. And that's what we go by in our heart. All right. My last words of wisdom. I just threw the word at you. What matters to God is whether we walk before Him in faith and we walked before Him in faith and obedience. Love God and love people. Preach the word, David. Preach the word. All right, thank you. So, next week we're going to try to cover. See, we finished 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Because there's 20 chapters in this book, or 22. All right, thank you.